Hello everybody, it's your Peacekeeper coming at you with a test video. We are here in the North Carolina and we are testing out the Mark 8 Super Heavy Shell and its penetration characteristics in this game. As you can see, we've got ourselves some Yamatos out in the training room here. They are inactive, not moving, not armed, thankfully, otherwise we would be very dead. And we're going to be doing some test shots on them. Now, before we do that, we are going to go ahead and we're going to switch over to this screen here. This is the page from Navy Weaps on the 16-inch 45 caliber Mark 6 guns that were on the North Carolina. And if we scroll down, we conveniently have this armor penetration table, which Wargaming claims to be using. As you can see, between 13.7 kilometers and 18.3 kilometers, we are penetrating deck armor between 3 and 4 1/3 inches worth of armor. The reason why we have the Yamato out downrange is because, well, she has 3 inches of deck armor. And if this game were indeed using the correct values, we should be able to reliably get pens on shells landing on the deck of the Yamato at this range. However, I'm willing to bet that we won't. So let's switch back to the game. Okay, so as I said, we're in the NC. He's 15.7 kilometers, so we're well within that 3 to 4 1/3 inches of deck pen range. Let's fire a salvo and see what we get. Anyone want to guess? We gonna land a hit on the deck or are we gonna miss? I think we're gonna bounce, actually. Bounce! No damage. Fire another one! Keep in mind, we should be penetrating. These should be 3 inches of armor. Shell broke on impact. I don't know where it impacted, I couldn't see it. And we're just going to keep doing this until we finally get ourselves some reliable pens. I think these are all going to miss. Yep. And I've done this is now the second time I've done this test, and in the first time the results were unsurprising. You could not pen the frontal armor. Bounce. So we had one that hit, I believe it was the turret that bounced. It's kind of hard to see. I guess we can zoom out a little bit. That might help a little. This one misses. Ooh, nice little tight cluster. Looks like they're trying to violate the laws of physics there, though. 2 bounces! Maybe we're not aiming high enough. Now keep in mind, again, according to Navy Weaps, we should be reliably penetrating 3 inches of deck armor at this range. Wow. Apparently the guys that were manning the secondaries decided to man the main guns. So this is 3 bounces. All 3 deck hits. So this is for anybody who says that the Mark 8 Super Heavy is working correctly. These shells are definitely landing in the deck. That hit the turret. That was I'm assuming the one that broke. And then the 2 that didn't break hit either superstructure or deck. As you can see, we have had 11 hits to the ship and 0 pens. There's another bounce. That one I think hit the turret, so we won't count him. 3 inches of deck armor, 15.7 kilometers. Should be reliably penning deck. Haha! We finally did some damage! Except I think that shell hit the superstructure. I'll have to go back and review the video just to be sure. Another bounce. That hit the belt armor. It's nice that they added in the shell cam so I could do this test. I think those are all going to be misses. Yep. Whoa. So as you can see, something's amiss. What could it possibly be? Apparently my aim. Need to tell the gunners, what is this dispersion? Holy cow. Alright, well, let's keep on, let's keep going. Well, maybe the issue here is we need to add range, because we're, you know... Oh, there's 2 more shell hits. Those hit at the base of the turret. Not the barbette, the base of the turret on the deck. They both broke, so I'm assuming that means they got decapped. That's going to be misses. 2 of them. Oh! Yep. Alright, so let's add range. So 16.3, no, not quite. 17.6. Yep, we'll try 17.6. And remember, we are purposely going for deck penetrations. Now, the 17.6 is going to be closer to that 4-inch mark. This ship is also, this Yamato is also slightly more broadside. Ooh, there's a good one. Okay, so maybe the issue is we definitely need to add some range. However, I think what happened there is that one actually hit the belt. And by the belt, I mean the unarmored front bow. There's one on the deck. Bounce. Nice little tight shell cluster. Of course, it would never do this if this were in-game and I was actually firing at Yamato. And 3 bounces. 2 of those were on the deck, 1 of those in the front unarmored bow. And, ooh, pretty. That one hit on the... looks like it hit on the belt. And it bounced anyway. So obviously the issue here isn't just range. Like I've said before in the past, I really honestly believe that deck pens in this game are not working as intended. There's another deck pen and a bounce. I don't think that they are working as intended. If they were, we would be penetrating the crap out of this and at least doing the 50% damage that we would get for deck for non-citadels but non-overpens. And we're not even getting that. In fact, the 2 hits that I have had on both these ships have been normal pen values. That's a miss. Yep. And so, I'm a bit miffed when people tell me that the Mark 8 is working as intended. Oop! There's a deck pen. Ricochet. So the other thing that I'm interested to test is whether or not we can replicate these results broadside on. Now I suspect we probably will get more penetrating hits than that. This, according to this, at 18 kilometers, 18.3 kilometers, can penetrate 17. There's another deck pen, or it should have been a deck pen, but it bounced. According to this, at 18.3 kilometers, it should be able to penetrate 17.62 inches of belt armor. And I'm assuming that's accounting for angle of fall, and I'm assuming that's an oblique hit. That was a superstructure hit. That one we will not count for damage. Oh. This looks like it could get a couple interesting hits. There's a deck pen. There's what should have been a deck pen, and there's a ricochet. I don't know how many more of these we actually need. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get my ship a moving here while we talk a little bit more about in-game mechanics. And oh, there was a pen, but no damage. No idea what caused that. So we know that it's not necessarily a range issue because the one hit that we had hit the unarmored bow or the superstructure and caused that damage, not a deck pen. In fact, all of our hits to all of these ships have been ricochets that have hit the deck. And we know that if Wargaming were indeed using the correct values, we should be penning 3 inches at a minimum of deck armor And that's all that the Yamato has. And that's at 13.7 kilometers. So that's coming up on this closest one here. Basically right now, if I were to fire off a salvo and it were to hit the deck, we should be penning straight through the deck. And I think we're going to miss. Oh, hit the armored bow. So once again, not exactly getting the reliable hits that we should be getting. One other interesting aspect, and I've not done the math to see what this is like, we should be getting citadels here pretty soon because we are now at 12 kilometers, which means we can penetrate 23.5 inches. Oh no, 9 kilometers. At this current, we should be penetrating 20.47 inches of belt armor. Now these tables, I don't know what the assumptions are being made for, aside from muzzle velocity, which is about 701 meters per second for this gun. I don't know if this is well, it says angle of fall, so I'm assuming that the angle of fall issue is being taken into account. Alright, so when we get to 9 kilometers, in theory, we should be able to citadel this Yamato. We're going to do it at 10 anyway, and we're going to focus right on the weak area at the front part of the citadel. Any bets? Any bets? We got one. Be interested to relook at that and see where that came in at. If that was at the damage to the barbette and hitting the deck behind the 1-2, or if that penetrated the belt. I'm imagining that probably penetrated the belt, but the interesting part is that it seems like in-game you can never get this to work correctly. Well, let's try it at 11 kilometers. These ships are almost broadside to us at this point. They're not perfectly broadside. It does replicate a mild. So apparently we're able to get reliable citadels with a mild angle here. They're probably angled, we'll call it 30 degrees. This is way less angle than they should have. Let's keep going forward here. To make myself feel better, I'm going to go ahead and delete a Yamato here. Just for the grins of it. No citadel, but lots of white damage. And then we're going to go back to testing deck armor broadside. We're also going to go out a little bit so that we can get the correct distance on the Yamato that's furthest away from us. Oh, RNGesus. 3 hits. That's all they gave me. How rude. You'd think I'd be able to get more than 3 hits off that. Apparently not. Especially given how I was aiming up. That makes like little to no sense. At all. Anyway, of interesting note, there we go. Of interesting note, the 16-inch 45 cal guns that were on the North Carolinas and South Dakotas were actually considered to be better deck penetrators than the 1650s on the Iowas. In fact, the switch to the 50 caliber barrels on the Iowa was precipitated mostly for the increase in range. Certainly not for barrel life. That should be a dead Yamato, unless, of course, you know, the Imperial Japanese Navy somehow... There we go. Alright, so we are basically broadside now to a Yamato here at, we'll call it 15.8 kilometers. That's almost exactly where we were at before. We're going to continue our deck pen tests. So in order to do that, we're going to focus on the area between the turret 1 and 2 turrets, and we are going to pay attention to where shell impacts are at. Now the hope is that these are going to result... bring me back. These are going to result in citadels from the deck pens and not from the belt pens, because it should be able to do that. I have to hit it though, and apparently that's more difficult than you would think. And we might get one out of this. And a ricochet. Who wants to guess where that one was from? So we are following the far one. That one looks like it might hit superstructure. Oh no. Hit the side of the turret. For no damage. So once again, as you can see, we're not getting any reliable pens, but we also haven't had a good hit on the deck. There's one on the upper armor belt that was considered an overpen. That overpen did 6,000 damage. So I don't think that was a complete through and through overpen. There was another one. Again, we're hitting belt armor here, so these aren't super indicative. We're trying to hit deck armor. That's gonna, yeah, that neither one of those hits are. As you can see, it's very difficult from this angle to actually hit deck. Oh, there was a deck hit. I'm going to assume, for the sake of assuming, that that was the normal damage one. I could be wrong. It's hard to tell. There was a deck pen. So we got a, or not a deck pen, but there was a ricochet off the deck. We did see a normal pen that was from the impact at the belt. This one, ooh, pretty. And no damage. Ricocheted. Now this does go to illustrate one further point. These hits to the lower belt, we are getting pens, but we're not getting citadels. So what does that tell you? Apparently the Yamato's citadel is very difficult to hit with these guns at this range. And miss. And maybe this time. Ooh. We got a normal pen and a ricochet. Don't know which one was which. There's a deck hit that ricocheted. Again, I'm just going to drive this point home further. We should be reliably penning the deck for, if nothing else, normal damage or overpen damage. Something. That one. Deck. I didn't see where that other one impacted. I'm going to assume it impacted the side. Those both impacted the side. Ooh. Citadel. Yep, I saw that one coming. None of those hit the deck. That one's gonna go over. We had one shell hit the deck and it bounced. You're noticing a recurring theme here. Mark 8, super heavy shell, working as intended, right? Totally has its realistic pen values. There's another one. No damage. Wow! I want to know how those decided to spread out last moment. And 3 hits and 2,000 damage. So one of the interesting side effects to the distance compression in this game is that the angle of fall for these shells and deck pen and a normal pen. The normal pen, I'm assuming, hit the turret and damaged the turret. The other was a ricochet. The interesting aspect of this is that the compressed distances. So the North Carolina has a maximum range without other further upgrades of only 23 kilometers. Now at 23 kilometers, the angle of fall is about 25 degrees. And we can pen about 5.75 inches. 5.76 inches is according to the Navy Weaps table. Okay, so we knocked out a turret. I don't know if that was the deck hit or if that was something else. And at best, this data is circumstantial. I mean, it's rare that you would ever get this. But anyway, as I was going on about the whole deck pens and angle of fall and all that stuff, basically what it amounts to is that U.S. ships aren't 2 deck hits and both ricochets. The U.S. ships in this game that fired the super heavy shells, and it's not just the fast battleships, the North Carolina, Iowa, and Montana. There's a couple of the later tier ships that shoot the super heavy 8-inch. There is the Cleveland that shoots the super heavy 6-inch. The angle of fall on all these projectiles is realistic, but because the distances are so hampered, we never actually get to see the engagement ranges that these ships were intended to actually engage at. That was a belt hit and a superstructure hit. So what that tells me is that we're never going to get the reliable pen values that we want. That was turret and belt. Bounced off the top of the turret and overpenned the armored bow. What that tells me is that we're never going to see the angle of falls necessary to reliably deck pen if Wargaming doesn't actually give us the correct pen values for deck armor. So, one of two things is happening here. Either the Yamato's deck armor... Hey, there was a pretty good cluster hit there. Ricocheted and one that penned the unarmored bow. Either Wargaming has to give us the realistic pen values, or we're just going to have to write off the deck pens as a realistic expectation. And if the latter is the case, then we need to seriously evaluate the ships in this game that use the super heavy shell, because that's been the biggest downside to all these ships. This might be a Citadel. The downside to all of these ships that use the super heavy shell is basically that the game, one, doesn't accurately represent superstructure hits at the base of the superstructure at the deck as being normal pens. They represent them unequivocally as being overpens. So at a minimum, we're getting screwed out of that already, because anything that hits the superstructure is an overpen if it has enough oomph to pen through both. So with that, you know, we're obviously at a disadvantage there. But two, we're not even seeing the realistic angles of fall, or if we are seeing the realistic angles of fall, we are not seeing the correct pen values for the shells. Now in this case, I'm specifically demonstrating the Mark 8 super heavy shell from the 16-inch guns. As you can see there, we're getting hits on the turret, but the one that hit the deck bounced. So we're not getting the realistic deck pens. So that's a problem. More bouncing. And I mean, have I demonstrated enough? Out of 117 hits, we've only done damage on like a third of them. Woo! And half the time, and so far, none of the times has that damage been from a shell impacting the deck and penning through the deck. Well, that one, of course, I opened my big fat mouth, and then we might have gotten one. So, anyway, this has been, you know, an interesting test for me. I hope it was an eye-opener for you guys. Realistically speaking, when it comes down to the Yamato dynamic, or when it comes down to the Mark 8 Super Heavy shells, if somebody tells you that the Mark 8 Super Heavy shell is working as intended, here's a test you can show them to shut them the hell up. Because it's obviously not working. We are well within the range at which we should be reliably penetrating the deck armor on a Yamato. And as we've seen here demonstrated a bunch, it's just not the case. We're getting a lot, and I do mean a lot, of ricochets off that deck. And I have a feeling it's because of the way the game's mechanics currently generalize shell flights. Now, this may change. This is 5.9 test. Maybe this will start working correctly when we get to 5.10, I guess is what they're going to call it. 5.10. It may change in 5.10 simply because supposedly they're tweaking some shell normalization values. Now, there was a deck pen. There was a deck pen that actually resulted in a overpen. So that we finally got one. It's only taken us like 30 minutes of me dicking around here to actually get one. So I don't know. This is all subject to change. I plan on redoing this test when 5.10 comes out, which with my luck will be Tuesday. So who knows? And as soon as I get that test, I will redo this and I will give you guys the updates as I get them. But for now, this is your Peacekeeper, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and have learned something from it. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.